Ian, you need to unmute, please. Hello, we're going to start with Ian Bolton from Sky, please, if you can just unmute. Thank you.
Hello, Roy, it's Ian here.
Hello, Ian.
Hello, sorry, I had you on really, really low. I could barely hear you.
I don't know. I sound loud in here, but I don't know.
No, you, trust me, you're sounding absolutely fine. All right, let's make us. I trust everything is okay with you. You're well.
Yes, fine, thank you. Yes, fine.
All right, let's make a start, and hopefully you have a bit of positive news. Martin Kelly was on the bench against Aston Villa last match. How is his overall recovery going? Is there a chance he could start against Manchester United?
Yes, I mean, I think we could do that if we wanted to select him. It's a possibility. He's been back in training now for almost 2 weeks, so that means, I think, that if we wanted to use him, he would be available. But of course, unless I was really forced into it, I'd rather give him a bit more time, because he's been missing for so long that the day when he does step back in, it's going to be a big day. So I prefer to keep him up my sleeve for as long as I possibly can.
How's the rest of your squad news looking? Obviously, no Christian Benteke for this match after being sent off against Villa, but everyone else, how do things stand?
Yes, I mean, Jeff Schlupp and James Tomkins have been back in training, although I think James might have had a slight recurrence today of his calf injury, but certainly Jeff Schlupp has been training also this week, which is a very positive piece of news. The doctors and the medical people are wary once again, having been out of football for so long, how many minutes he could safely play, but it's very good to have him available at least, and he himself feels good and would be more than happy to play the number of minutes that I feel we can give him.
And that's for the Manchester United match.
Yes.
Jeff Schlupp.
Yeah, Jeff will be back. He'll start on the bench, but the good thing is that he's there, and it's always going to be a temptation to use him in a game, because we need all the help we can get in these sort of matches. But the doctors and the medical people are warning me that, you know, the longer we could leave it, the better it would be, because he hasn't played even before the lockdown. So we're talking, you know, literally almost half a year these days out of the game.
So, well, I mean, given that they were out, you know, Martin, James and Jeff have been out for so long, and there was always the expectation that they might not play again this season. Well, what does it mean to at least have two of the three available?
Yes, it's much better. There's no doubt about that. It means that our squad and our bench look stronger, which one's always very, very happy about. But most importantly, I think we've got to start thinking in terms of next season as well, and making certain that when we start next season, we're not starting like we did now when this mini season began, without three of our more important squad members. You know, I'd like really to make sure that all of those, and with Gary Cahill hopefully as well, are back in the frame, so there's the right number of players to choose from.
Look, it wasn't that long ago that Crystal Palace were 10th in the table. We were talking about the possibility of a top half finish, you know, maybe Palace's highest ever Premier League finish. But you go into this match having lost 5 in a row. Just how important is it, you know, to end this disappointing run?
It's important, of course, but you can only do it by playing well, and the level of opponents that we're running up against isn't making life any easier for us. But the fact is, it would have been nice to have had a good period in this 9-game spell. We started it well enough, but unfortunately we've not been able to carry that on, at least not in terms of results. 1 or 2 of the games that we've played have not been that bad, but unfortunately if it doesn't bring a result, it's all that matters, and that's all people are judging by, because people don't remember what actually happened in the game, whether you played well or played badly, whether you had a goal, in our opinion, wrongly disallowed or not. These things are just, well, what was the score at the end of the game? And unfortunately, the score at the end of our last 5 games has been a very bad one as far as we're concerned.
The score at the end of the match at Old Trafford earlier in this season, though, showed a Crystal Palace victory. You beat Manchester United 2-1. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer has today described that as a freak result. Do you take exception to that?
No, I take exception to very little these days, I've got to say. I think when you stand in front of the microphone, the sort of questions you're getting all the time are inviting you to be controversial and to try and say something which the person on the other end of it will feel hurtful or feel hurt by. So basically, I take exception to very little these days. I was happy with our performance up there, and of course, very happy with the victory. But I think every manager can regard the game in the way he wants to regard the game, and if that's how he wants to describe it, then I will happily take that.
How is Wilf Zaha? How has he been over the last few days, particularly after what's been happening, the abuse he received before the Aston Villa match? He's called for action. He's called for change from social media platforms, and recently we've seen that footballers can have a big impact. They can have a big say in change. How loud a voice, how big a role can you see Wilf having in all of this?
As someone involved in football at this level, I'm very proud of what the players have done. I'm proud of what Kick It Out has done for the game, and that's not just since Black Lives Matter. That goes back way beyond that. But the bottom line is that these things are still happening. Players are still being abused in this way. It affects their mental welfare. There's no doubt about that. For Wilf to receive this on the day of a game and then be expected a couple of hours later to go out and perform and forget all about it, I think that's asking something which isn't humanly possible, because the brain and the mind doesn't function in that way. And of course, you realise that all the time these posts are possible, and people can often hide behind and not even be identified for having made the post. I don't quite know what more football and football people can do other than to take the strongest possible stance and then hopefully catch any culprits and then punish them or educate them, as the case might be. I took offence at people suggesting that my comments were too harsh because it was a 12-year-old boy. Because for the first instance, I had no idea who'd sent the tweet, whether it was a 60-year-old man just leaving a pub or a 5-year-old deciding to, repeat something he'd heard in the playground. So my comment was made that I think people posting these tweets should be punished in the strongest possible way, and that what they do is vile and reprehensible, and is something we shouldn't need to put up with. The fact that it's turned out to be a 12-year-old boy, or if we're to believe the reports, I mean, I don't know if that's true or not, but if it's true that it was a 12-year-old boy, in some ways it's even more frightening, because how does someone get educated at the age of 12 to post something quite as vile as he was prepared to post, and where has that come from? And that really raises enormous questions about our education system.
Well, I don't want to get too involved in this one incident, but
no, I know it's a question of sound bites, isn't it? But unfortunately, sometimes the sound bite doesn't work for me. And in this instance, this isn't something that I want a sound bite on. If you really want to hear my opinion on, what's going on with Wilf Zaha, you'll have to, record and use what I say. So I'm not prepared to give one thing thrown out there in a matter which is of such importance.
But in terms of forcing change, from the social media platforms themselves, does Wilf have, that's a big fight. Does he have the character to cope with that, to deal with that, to force a change?
I have no idea. I have no idea how change can be forced on social media. I am absolutely not an expert at all on social media, how it functions and what could be done to stop this type of thing happening from the social media platforms. I'm afraid I'll have to leave that to the people who know all about it. And has Wilf got the character and the desire to step forward in the same way that Raheem Sterling has stepped forward and shown himself to be someone who's prepared to stand out there and stand up for the rights that all people should have, really, and to fight the injustice? Then my answer would be yes, he's strong enough to do it. But how he can do it, what he could do, and what change he could bring about, I really do not know.
The Premier League have confirmed the dates for this summer's, I use the term loosely, this summer's transfer window. We know that it's going to start on the 27th of July. It's going to finish on October the 5th. There'll be an extension for a few domestic deals after that. Is it good to get clarity, to know where we're going?
Oh yes, absolutely. It's going to be an important period of time for many clubs. I'm hoping it's going to be an important time for my club here at Crystal Palace. And I think clarity is a buzzword at the moment. You know, a word that doesn't appear in our lives that often until suddenly you can't turn on a TV station these days without hearing the word clarity mentioned. But it's nice to know when the season's going to begin, when it's going to end, and when transfer windows are going to be active, because it does give you a chance then, if you want to be yourself active in the transfer window, to start planning and to start doing your work.
Look, finally from me, the subject of financial fair play has been spoken about a lot this week. It was brought in to make a level playing field for everyone. What do you think we've learned about FFP this week?
What we've learned about it, I think what we've learned about it is that if it can be challenged in this way, it's obviously not 100% secure at the moment. But I've got to say that it has little to do with me. I mean, you know, we are not in that world where financial fair play considerations come into it at all. And as far as the debate that's raged for the last couple of days, with people having opinions on whether City have done right or wrong, or whether they should or should not be in the league, all I can say is I'm delighted to see them in the Champions League. I like to see our top clubs competing in Europe and trying to win competitions, and I'll leave other people to decide whether or not any breaches of financial fair play have been committed. And I'm perfectly happy that the court that's now decided that there were no breaches, and they are, you know, more than welcome, if you like, from their point of view, to take their place, their rightful place in the Champions League. That's more than good enough for me. And I'll leave the major debate on the subject to those people who are really concerned about it. Or concerned.
Do you think it is confusing, though? Do you think there are mixed messages?
I don't really know, because, as I say, I've not really been involved in it at all, and I haven't studied it to any extent anyway. And it's a very broad subject. You know, we live in a world now where football clubs are not owned by the local mill owner; they're owned by billionaires overseas. So you know, you're in a complicated realm to kick off with, and I've got more than enough to concern myself with at Crystal Palace, trying to make certain we stay in the league and win some football matches and improve our squad. So I'll leave worries about the financial fair play to those people who might well be affected by it, because it could be affecting their Champions League places.
Thank you, Ian. Cheers.
Yeah, no, Roy, thank you very much indeed for your time. Thank you for your honest answers. And listen, I wish you well against Manchester United.
Kind you, Ian. Thank you.
Okay, we'll now go to Vashali from PLP.
Hi, Roy. I wanted to ask about the game against Chelsea, because Palace were really impressive, particularly in that second half. So you've got another top six side obviously coming tomorrow. So would you like to see that kind of performance from your side from the off tomorrow? Oh,
absolutely. I'd like to see that type of performance all the time. It was a very good game from our side, I thought, against the top team, of course. And I consider ourselves unfortunate not to have come away with a result from that game. But now we've got another team of the same level of quality coming to visit, you know, with a lot of really top class individual players. And also in a very rich vein of form. So we are aware that nothing less than a performance of that level would be good enough if we're going to try and get something from the game on Thursday night, tomorrow night, in fact.
And what has the mood been like in training since the defeat to Aston Villa?
Well, there's hardly any training, is there? I mean, the problem is these days the games come so thick and fast. Mood in training is normally judged over a week. Now we're judging it over probably one training session. But the players themselves were unhappy, of course, with the performance against Aston Villa. Felt themselves a little bit hard done by, of course, with the disallowed goal, which I still find very hard to understand. But they also know that that level of performance was nowhere near as good as the level we're capable of giving. And you've already mentioned one we'd given a few days before against Chelsea, which was of a much higher calibre. So I'm sure they'll be working very, very hard to get back to that level of performance tomorrow evening.
And one final question from me. It's just one clean sheet since the restart. Have you specifically addressed that in training or with the players, just trying to keep a clean sheet for the confidence of the side?
Well, you don't work very much on anything in training these days. We try and use every spare minute we can to work on our game, but there are so few minutes available to do so. But you'd have to analyse almost every goal you're conceding and deciding then what trends there might be and anything in those trends that you could possibly address. Obviously, a couple of the goals have come from corner kicks, but we do try to work on that. But that's concerning, I suppose, because we weren't conceding many goals from corner kicks and free kicks before. And it's something we have to be aware of. But the bottom line is this: that since we've come back and played Bournemouth, we've played a lot of the top sides, and some of them away from home. So Liverpool beat us quite heavily. We lost to Leicester 3-0 with one goal in the 95th minute and one goal, unfortunately, a slip from our centre-back, which presented them with a second goal. And we lost 3-2 to Chelsea with the first goal really coming because our player pulled a muscle and went down and gave the guy a free run on goal. So maybe that didn't happen quite so often when we were keeping clean sheets.
Okay, thanks so much, Roy.
Thank you. Thanks. We'll now go to Ian Abraham from TalkSport.
Hi, Roy. Good afternoon. How are you?
Good, thank you.
We're nearing the end for Project Restart, the end of this season, which started nearly a year ago. Has it been a success in your eyes?
For some teams, it certainly has, hasn't it? And others less so, but that's what any period of 9 games is going to be. There'll be teams that at the end of the 9 games saying that was good for us, we had a good spell, and teams saying it was a poor spell for us and we didn't do as well as we would like to do. But it should be judged really on a much more global plane than how was the 9 games for you. The big question is, did we want football to just disappear off the face of the earth as far as we're concerned and face maybe an even more worrying future? Because now at least we're talking about a season ending, a season beginning, transfer windows being opened up. Had nothing happened, maybe we would have been looking, well, is September the right time to start, or should it be November, or should we cancel next season as well because this coronavirus might come back? So in that respect, the fact that such a lot of work went into getting these matches played, albeit behind closed doors, albeit in somewhat difficult circumstances, I'd have to say for the world of football in general, and certainly for our world in the Premier League, it was vital, and as a result, it's been a huge success.
That was my follow-up, actually. I mean, everyone says there might be a second spike in the winter when people normally suffer from colds and flu anyway. In terms of football, could it handle another lockdown? And in a sense, do you football clubs this season, while planning for next season as normal with transfer windows, also have to plan for another season like this?
Well, I think that you don't have an awful lot of choice but to deal with the problems that come up at any stage. And if there was to be another spike in the coronavirus, it forced another lockdown, then there are only 2 possibilities: deal with it or do not deal with it. If you're asking the question, would it be a huge financial blow to the football clubs and would it cause even more havoc, especially the lower down the leagues you go, then the answer is the obvious one. Yes, it would. It would be terrible for them, and it's still going to remain terrible for them until such time as we can start getting crowds back in, because we're not televising that many games from Division 1 and 2. We're doing the Premier League and the Championship, and as a result, their sources of income are still very, very low, and they've still got a lot of debts to meet. So I can only hope that things will continue at least on the level they are at the moment, and will continue to improve, and that fans will gradually be allowed back into the stadium, and we'll get football back in a somewhat more normal form as soon as possible.
There was talk yesterday of maybe 20% or 25% of crowds coming in for next season. Logistically difficult, and people would have to be patient, but I mean, that'd be great, wouldn't it, to have somebody inside the stadium cheering your team on?
Yeah, I mean, all these things are steps forward, aren't they? I don't know if that's going to happen or not, because it's conjecture, it's some sort of speculation, but it's good conjecture and speculation, because it gives hope. It gives hope that we are moving away from the very worst of the situation that we've endured, and that we could be looking forward in the not too distant future of getting football back more in the form that we recognise it, and a form that, of course, will improve the quality of the game, because it's hard for everybody playing behind closed doors.
United's game has been improved since they signed Bruno Fernandes. It'd be lovely if Crystal Palace could ever sign a player that expensive, wouldn't it, Roy? Bruno Fernandes?
I guess it would, yeah. But I mean, the fact is, all leagues have. I'm pretty certain that let's choose my club very carefully here, but let's say Union Berlin, I'm pretty sure would like to sign the same players as Bayern Munich. But that's not the way it works in football. We move in different circles, we move in different markets. Manchester United's goal at the start of every season is to certainly used to be to win the league. Now, we're reducing that and saying Man United, their goal might be to be in the Champions League. Well, to do that, you sign players like Pogba and Bruno Fernandes, and we at Crystal Palace realise that we're not going to be in that ballpark, and we have to make certain we try to sign the type of players that we need to achieve our goals, which I'm sure when we start next season will be a top 10 finish.
Thank you, Roy. Great speaking to you as usual.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I think that's the end of the broadcast section, please. So if I can ask the broadcasters to leave, and we'll carry on with the writers.